Hey everyone, welcome to the Roto Grinders Morning Grind Podcast. I'm your host, Stevie TPFL. It's June 29th. It's Wednesday. We're going to talk some early baseball here. Dan's going to cover the late slate on the Daily Fantasy Fix podcast. That will be in the same spot as where you found this one. So make sure you guys check that out to get your late game analysis. But we're here to talk about the early game. We have 7 games here in the early slate, and we're going to break those down. I got a first-time guest with me today, Devo Poker, as you guys know him from the golf show, but I know him as Brian. I call him Devo. What's up, my man?
Not much. Stoked to be here. Long-time listener, first-time caller. I love these early podcasts just to kind of get my brain working on, the slate. And then as I start building lineups, I already have an idea of the direction I want to go. So I'm excited to do this show with y'all. Thank you for having me aboard. And we're working with FanDuel pricing today, so let's get into it.
Yes, man. But before we get into it, let's talk our sponsor site, fantasydraft.com. If you guys haven't checked them out, make sure you guys check them out. They got a lot of interesting contests every week. They have some golf stuff. They have baseball stuff. They got all kinds of stuff over on Fantasy Draft. So make sure you guys use promo code GRINDERS. That way you get incentives here at Roto Grinders for Fantasy Draft for free for a year, and you get a 100% deposit bonus up to $600, which doesn't suck. So make sure you guys check them out. $6,000 tour card. They got all kinds of $5,000 home runs, a bunch of stuff going on in Fantasy Draft. But, yeah, like you said, let's talk some baseball. And we're going to start it off here with Boston at Tampa. David Price and Matt Moore taking on each other here. I really, when we're looking at the slate, David Price, the highest priced pitcher on the slate. But, man, it's really hard to pick on the Rays when you have a guy like David Price just because the Rays are the best team in baseball against left-handed pitching this year.
Yeah, I mean, David Price is also the only, ace on the slate, though. So are people just going to go to him by default?
I hope so.
Yeah, I kind of hope so, too. Last time I did a show, I talked about how his velocity is really down this season, and it hasn't changed at all. He got blown up his last outing, and his velocity actually came down another tick on the gun. So I think it's a great leverage play to be off David Price on this early slate because people are going to want to pay up for pitching somewhere, and he's the only place you can.
Yeah, one start against Tampa this year, 3 2/3 innings, 8 earned runs, 8 hits. They hit him hard. He did have 5 strikeouts in those 3 2/3, but anytime you give up 8 earned runs in less than 4 innings, it's not a good start. And like you mentioned, the velocity, that's an issue. But the thing that's bothering me the most with David Price this year, his hard contact rate is up 6% this year. And why that doesn't seem like a lot, going from 28% to 34%, that's a lot.
Yeah, that is a lot, and it correlates with his velocity. So, I mean, all the metrics on David Price are down. I've been off him all season, and I'm going to continue to fade him. I'm hoping his ownership is extremely inflated tomorrow morning.
Yeah, now on the flip side of this, with Matt Moore on the other side, I just don't know if I can take Matt Moore here either. I know the Red Sox, they're a potent offense, but they have been struggling. I just don't think that Matt Moore is the answer to go after the Red Sox with.
I agree with you. I think he's a fine value at 7.5K on FanDuel. He just doesn't really have any strikeout upside for me, though. I'm going to look other ways in GPPs.
Yeah, I'm with you there. Let's talk bats in this game. Normally, I wouldn't be interested, but looking at the Rays here against David Price, I think they're a really sneaky stack. Nobody's going to play them at Tampa when we have a Coors Field game on this slate. Arizona on this slate. So I think the Rays are really sneaky here against David Price.
I totally agree with you. They're extremely cheap around the industry, and they've got a lot of power in their bats, especially against left-handed pitching. And you can look at guys like Logan Morrison, Tim Beckham would be really sneaky, Desmond Jennings, Jeff Decker, if he gets a start tomorrow. I think all of them make really excellent plays against Price.
Looking at the other side of this game, Matt Moore, not a guy that I'm really scared about. I think Mookie Betts, you can look at Alexander, and I really think you can look at Hanley Ramirez too.
Yeah, I think Hanley is a fine play in certain sites depending on his price. I think he is overpriced here at FanDuel at 3.3K. It's just such a park downgrade for Boston. They're all pretty overpriced around the industry. And Moore just, isn't a pitcher that I typically really want to pick on. But David Ortiz has some pretty good BVP numbers.
Does he really? What is that?
3 home runs and 20 at bats, batting .400.
Nice. I'm all about the BVP, so I definitely can get behind that. So I don't hate that for sure. When you're targeting Matt Moore, you want to target righties against him, but David Ortiz, the home run per 9 against lefties is still up there for Matt Moore as well. So I think you can definitely target the Red Sox here. And with their prices being so high, I just don't see a lot of people playing them, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, if you're going to be spending up, you're probably going to be heading towards Coors Field on this slate.
All right, let's move it on over Chicago at Cincinnati. Another team you can look at here, Kyle Hendricks against Cody Reed. Kyle Hendricks is exactly the type of pitcher that you want to target at a ballpark like Cincinnati. A really ground ball pitcher, doesn't give up a lot of hard contact. He's exactly the guy that you want. The problem with Kyle Hendricks, and it's the problem every time he pitches, you just don't know how many pitches he's going to throw.
Yeah, I don't ever really see him going the distance and giving me that sort of upside, and I just don't really see him having any strikeout upside. I think he's overpriced around the industry, and I don't really want him in the Great American Small Park, even though he is a style of pitcher that we like in these small ballparks.
Yeah, I don't hate him here just because the slate is so limited with pitchers. I think he's definitely an option. DraftKings Fantasy Draft as an SP2, I definitely think you can look at him. And on FanDuel, where the win is so important, if he goes 5 innings, which I say that seriously, if he goes 5 innings, I definitely think he's in a spot that he could pick up a win here. With Cody Reed facing the Cubs, I think that we're going to see a lot of runs from the Cubs.
Yeah, and don't forget about that terrible bullpen that Cincinnati has. They had to throw a ton of innings the other night, and who knows what the Cubs are going to do to them tonight, but that game's still underway.
Yeah, it's actually only 2-0 and not using a lot of bullpen tonight. The Cubs disappointing a lot of people. When you look at Cody Reed, it's a small sample size, but every time he's been out there so far this season, he's getting hit hard, which is always nice for an offense like Chicago. I think we can just go back to the stack here, load up on guys like Ben Zobrist, who hits left-handed pitching really well, always really sneaky against lefties. Zobrist, Anthony Rizzo, Chris Bryant, all these guys definitely in play for me here.
Yeah, they make fine options. They're definitely expensive. I think Coors is a better play point per dollar wise. And we've seen that the Chicago has been extremely popular throughout the industry this week, and they've been winning people GPPs. So I expect that trend to continue tomorrow morning. And I'm going to be off the Cubs bets for that reason.
Yeah, and we've seen here, on Tuesday night that it's very, very possible that they can go out and only score a few runs and really, be a pain. So I'm still up for stacking them. If I'm going to play any one-off guys, it would probably be Zobrist. His price tag, nobody's going to play Ben Zobrist at 4,300. He'd be the one guy that I would really look at as a one-off.
Yeah, I just don't like his price tag, but I think you're right. People are going to totally be off of him. If I'm going to play one player, it's going to be either Javier Baez or Joey Votto, with that dong upside that they possess. Unfortunately, though, Baez is just, pretty popular. Everybody knows that he has power. He fills in that shortstop slot, and he's a punt that can dong for you. So I'm just really going to be avoiding this game kind of as a whole.
Yeah, Votto, I think, is a really good call. Good price tag on him. Nobody's going to play him because it's a matchup against Hendricks, but Votto's squaring everything up. We've seen it on Monday, Tuesday. I know he hit one ball to the warning track. He's squaring everything up right now when he's hitting a ball to center field that goes almost over the fence against a lefty. I think Votto is an excellent call there. He would be the one-off guy. Adam Duvall, I'm never going to hate anybody for playing Adam Duvall. He's having an amazing breakout season.
Yeah, he's got so much pop in his bat, and it was really fun rostering him at the start of the season when nobody knew about him and he was 2K. But those days are behind us, and now he's just too expensive for me.
Miami at Detroit, Tom Kohler, Daniel Norris. Daniel Norris, lefty, Toronto organization over here to Detroit now. A lot of up and down road here for Daniel Norris, but I just don't know if this is the spot that I can target him. Stanton's starting to warm up. Ozuna's crushing lefties this season. I think we can look elsewhere.
Yeah, I don't like the matchup here either. Stanton donged already once tonight. Yeah, pretty batter-friendly ballpark. 4.5 run total already for Miami on the overnight. I don't want to go anywhere for pitching in this game.
Yeah, Kohler's been interesting this year because he's limited his damage and he's been putting up double-digit points on, two-pitcher sites like DraftKings and Fantasy Draft. I think he's done it all but 2 or 3 times this year. I just can't do it against Detroit, right? Like, Detroit's offense is just too good that we cannot target Tom Kohler here, right?
Yeah, I mean, they're loaded with, veteran power hitters, and they have a high team total in a hitter-friendly park, and it's not like Kohler is a high strikeout pitcher. So although he's going to be under-owned, there just isn't any upside there to me.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Now, looking at the bats in this game, Miami against Norris, I think we can target Stanton, Ozuna, Martin Prado, I think is a sneaky play that would be in the 2 or 3 spot there. He hits left-handed pitching really well.
Yeah, I think Stanton is a pretty strong call there. He's got the most dong upside there. And did you say you liked Ozuna?
Yeah, I love Ozuna. I'm like the biggest Ozuna fan there is.
Yeah, I think he's got a lot of upside as well. This is an excellent matchup for him, but he's probably a pretty good pivot because I think most people would lean Stanton at the same price point on FanDuel. Am I right?
Yeah, I would definitely think so. Stanton, though, multi-hits in 6 out of his last 10 games. That's an encouraging sign for a guy like Stanton. So I think he's an excellent play. Ozuna, if you want to pivot, Ozuna's hitting 320 this year. I think it's up over 400 WOBA against lefties this season. ISO's up there. He mashes left-handed pitching. Yeah,
absolutely. And you're right. He's got a great matchup, and he's on the road, so there's a good chance he can get 5 at-bats there.
Any other Marlins bats that you might like here?
Eddie Echeverria, if he gets a start. He might lead off against the left-handed Norris, and yeah, I think he's a great price at 2.2K if he gets that spot.
Yeah, if he's in the leadoff spot, punt shortstop, I'm all for that. Detroit now on the other side, I think we can look at Kohler here and pick on him with some of these bets. I'm not going to go crazy. Kohler doesn't give up a lot of home runs, so that has me a little off, but guys like Miguel Cabrera at 3,500, that just seems way too cheap.
Yeah, I agree. These guys are all pretty underpriced, and I also agree with you. I don't see the home run upside. Kohler does a good job of keeping the ball in the ballpark, but I do see Detroit being able to put up a bunch of runs. They got into that Marlins bullpen early tonight, so they're going to be throwing a bunch of pitches there. If Kohler doesn't have it tomorrow, he might get just fed to the wolves and death by paper cuts. And so I like a full Detroit stack here.
I think I'm with you on this Detroit stack. I think any stack outside of Colorado and Arizona on this 7-game early slate is going to be different. So even the Cubs, I think the Cubs would be popular as well. I think if you're not stacking those teams like Detroit that has that 10-run upside, just a team that can pound the baseball, I think that's a great call.
Yeah, and there's 6 of them really to choose from that do have home run upside. They're not as likely to dong as maybe some of our other options, but it's hard to hit home runs. So we just need our guys to do it and their guys to not, and we win.
That's right. If I'm stacking Detroit, I've said it all year. If it's a righty, I'm not playing Victor Martinez in my stack. I'm going to only play Victor Martinez in my stack against lefties. I'm going to stay by my word there. He would be the one guy that I would leave off on my stack.
Yeah, that's fine. There's enough other options you can go to. You can even, Kinsler's got decent power at the second base position, or you can go with Cameron Maybin, who can steal you a couple bags. Before
we move on here, if you don't believe in BVP, Billy Hamilton absolutely owns John Lester. He just hit another home run off of him. Of all people to hit home runs, Billy Hamilton. Oh, yeah. I just wanted to throw that out there. We talked about him on the podcast yesterday, and it's just crazy how much Billy Hamilton owns John Lester.
That is rather amusing, but yeah, I grew up playing ball also, and there were some guys that I just could not get out, and there were other guys that could never hit me.
You know how I feel about it. I'm the same way. I talk about it all the time. I grew up playing baseball. I played baseball for 20 years. I pitched at high level. It's real. Some people crush my pitches that I felt like I was making excellent pitches. And some people, you just make bad pitches and strike them out. So it is what it is. But we're going to move on. Toronto at Colorado, assuming that we don't get a postponement here, and this is what we're going to see for the Wednesday slate. It's Aaron Sanchez and Tyler Anderson. We're going to break it down as if it's those pitchers. So we don't want the pitchers here, right?
No, this is no John Gray. There is no K upside. While Tyler Anderson is a decent value, I mean, there's just really no reason to go here. I mean, this is a pretty short slate, though, and baseball is a very highly volatile game. So I don't mind, like, fading Coors and taking the pitcher, but you've got to have some K upside to do that, and these guys just don't possess it.
Yeah, Sanchez is just a guy, even dating back to last year. He really struggles with lefties. He has a 1.54 whip dating back to last year, 347 WOBA. Yeah, he's a ground ball guy, but anytime you see a whip that high against a specific hand of hitter, and you're going to look at a Rockies lineup that has Blackmon, Cargo, they have these lefties that can put a hurting on Sanchez. I just no interest there. Like you said, John Gray, we saw that Toronto lineup come out with 7 righties against John Gray, and it was like, all right, this guy has some strikeout upside, and he was 2% owned and put up like 24 DK points. So I just don't think this is the spot. You know, Tyler Anderson, he's a lefty. If he wasn't a lefty going against the Blue Jays, I have some interest, but a lefty against the Blue Jays, it's just not a good spot here.
Yeah, and there's just other ways to be contrarian that is a better spot. You know, like you can get low ownership in other places that has higher upside.
Let's talk bats in this game. We'll start with Toronto. They're the visiting team. You're going to pay up for the top 2 guys here. Edwin and Josh Donaldson, both these guys, 55 and 5,600. You're going to pay up. But is this a spot that you think we need to pay up?
Well, it's a spot that we can pay up because there is so few pitching options outside of David Price. And it's also a spot that I expect most people to pay up because nobody likes leaving much money on the table. And I think that everyone's going to be all over Coors Field tomorrow morning, especially in this early 7-game slate. There's a lot of other quality options. You know, most of these team totals are between 4 and 5, you know, while Colorado is 5.8 and Toronto's 6.7 right now, as it's implied. I think that it's game theory optimal to basically completely fade Coors Field and GPPs because of how easily people are going to be able to take bats from this game because of the pitching options out there.
In tournaments, I'm all for it. I'm always willing to take a shot on looking elsewhere. But the one thing here is it's a really great spot in cash games. You're going to want to get exposure to this game. In tournaments, what Devo's saying here, it makes a lot of sense. You know, game theory wise, it makes a ton of sense. I'm pulling up real quick to see. It's not even going to be one of those games where it's like 92, 93. You know, it's going to be in the mid 80s here at first pitch in Toronto or in Colorado. So it's not even one of those really hot games in Coors Field.
Yeah, and we will need to pay attention to what the weather does to the game tonight because, you know, that could change the starting pitching for this game and all that sort of stuff. But it doesn't rain during the day in Colorado. It just rains in the evening and the afternoon. It's kind of our summer thing, the monsoon season and stuff. So I don't think we need to worry about that, but just something to pay attention to what happens tonight.
Colorado bats here, Blackmon, Cargo, both these guys, you know, they're priced up, but I think a lot of people are going to be looking at Blue Jays here against Tyler Anderson, and Aaron Sanchez at least has a little bit of name value behind him. Decent ERA. I think we can stack Colorado, and I don't expect them to be in that 30% ownership.
Yeah, I definitely expect Toronto to be more owned than Colorado. They have a higher team total. I like their price tags a bit more, and I like their matchup a bit more. Tulo's where I'm starting from cash games. 3.4K on FanDuel is way too cheap. I think Story is an interesting GPP pivot because most people will go to Tulo. Russell Martin, Michael Saunders. Devin Travis, all fine cash game options. And yeah, I think most people will lean towards stacking that way. Hopefully Colorado releases their lineup with like 15 minutes ago, and then we could get them to really low ownership like we did today.
Houston at LA taking on the Angels. Dallas Keuchel, Jared Weaver. Keuchel, probably one of the biggest disappointments this season, and I don't think that's really going out on a limb. He's just been really disappointing.
Yeah, I took a look into that a couple months ago when I was considering playing him one night, and he's pitching pretty dang well lately. And I remember reading about how he was like, "Yeah, I'm working on it and I'm getting there." But he's put up a lot of points lately and has been a pretty good value at the $7K price point. He's one of the pitchers I'm going to be looking to instead of David Price this evening or this morning.
Man, I don't know if I can do it. I really don't. The Angels, their offense isn't great, but they get a lot better against lefties. They're WRC plus. They're in the top 10 against lefties this season. They're only striking out 16.5% of the time. Yeah, his $8,000 price tag is there. Houston swinging hot bats right now against Weaver. The win's probably likely for Keuchel. I don't see the upside here.
Yeah, that is one of the things that bums me out about him. I don't see the upside for him either, but for a cash game play, nice ballpark boost going out to Anaheim for the pitcher. I see him putting down some innings at least, and he's, minus 140 favorite, which is one of the biggest on the slate.
Yeah, it's as far as the slate goes, it's a 7-game slate. It's really ugly. We don't have a set in stone, even like a number 2 option. Like where you're gonna win on this slate, you're not gonna win with hitters. I think a lot of people are gonna have offenses that score runs. That typically happens when you don't have a lot of good pitchers. So the scoring is going to be there. It's going to be where you put your foot down with your pitcher, and hopefully, a guy like Keuchel, who even this year when he's struggling, he still has a 58% ground ball rate. He's not even giving up a lot of home runs this year. A lot more than last year. The hard contact rate's up 10%. I don't love him. I can get behind it for, the win, which is always nice for the 12 points. He's only 8K. I can get behind those points. I can't get behind him as a upside tournament play.
Yeah, I'm going to be looking a different direction myself for an upside tournament play, but he's my third favorite pitcher on the slate.
Jared Weaver, God, you can't play Jared Weaver here, right? I know he pitches better at home, and there's been all kinds of stuff about his release point in the rocks, like what we heard last podcast. I can't do it here.
Yeah, I'm not going to play him either.
Let's talk bats in this game. I know that you don't hate Keuchel here, but Mike Trout, one of the hottest hitters in baseball right now. If there's a guy that you want here from the Angels, it has to be Trout.
Absolutely. I mean, he's the cornerstone of that team, and he's been pretty under-owned lately, thanks to not having many studs around him. He hasn't been putting up as big of numbers, which has been bringing his price tag down, but he's still got Jack in the Bag upside, and he was 5% owned last night. I'm not sure what he's owned tonight, but that's just way too low for a guy of Trout's caliber.
Yeah, I talked about him the last couple nights. He has multi-hits in 5 straight games. He has home runs in 3 straight games. We don't know what he's doing on Tuesday night, but this is just it's a really good spot to target Trout here against Keuchel. He'd be the one guy. I don't think I'm going to go out of my way to pick on Keuchel, especially if Escobar is still in the lineup. Escobar is one of the best lefty hitters on this team, so if he's out, I think that bumps Keuchel a little bit.
Yeah, but I mean, it's kind of tough to make that Angels lineup any worse, eh?
That Angels lineup is pretty bad. I definitely agree. I think the Houston stack here, I think we can look at Houston again.
Yeah, there's a ton of pop in their bat. They're, the quintessential GPP stack. Lots of Ks, lots of dongs. I think they're just too expensive here. And this is, not the right ballpark to be sending baseballs out of, even though it is the end of June in Southern California. I'm going to look at Trout. I like the Angel side a bit more. I do like AJ Reed from Houston and his price of 2.5K. He's got a ton of power. People haven't really figured out about him yet. He's my favorite one-off from this game.
I'm glad you said that. I talked about him on the podcast yesterday. He's a guy, like I said yesterday when we were talking to EMAC, this guy is the number one prospect in the minors as far as first basemen go. He has pop. So I definitely like him here. I have him in some lineups on Tuesday night. I hope he comes through for me as we're doing the podcast here. Philadelphia at Arizona. Next game we got Zach Eflin against Archie Bradley. Zach Eflin stinks at baseball. There's no other way around it. This guy is not good. And Arizona is so frustrating because this lineup is really bad, right? Like, where do you pick on a guy like Zach Eflin outside of Goldschmidt and Jake Lamb?
Yeah, the Diamondbacks lineup is pretty bad, and they're not exactly cheap either. I mean, I don't like any of these matchups either. Like, Peter O'Brien can hit it out, but he's definitely not a cash game play. And I don't know. I don't see anything in this game either. Maybe Michael Bourne, but he's not really exciting. Just cheap.
Yeah, I guess if he's in that 2 spot, right? Like,
Right.
Peter O'Brien has massive power. I talk about him all the time. If he's in the lineup in that 5 or 6 spot, he's a good tournament play. Goldschmidt's my favorite, but you're going to pay for Goldschmidt. He's going to be your pivot, off of E5 on this slate if that's what you want to do.
Yeah, and that's not a bad leverage play. Again, we're looking to be contrarian in GPPs here on this, half slate with Coors.
Now, looking at Archie Bradley, it's Philadelphia. They're always a team we want to pick on. Archie Bradley, he's been hot or cold. He's been really good or really bad, but the strikeout upside has definitely been there for him. He's averaging over a strikeout per inning this season. Is he a guy you might look at here on this slate?
I love Archie Bradley on this slate. His K upside is real. He's putting up big numbers and has been very consistent. It's just a matter of time until his price starts climbing. I don't know anything about him as his minor league career. Is this something that's real and to be expected, or do you think this is faking away?
No, he was a big time prospect last year, and then he got hit by that line drive in the face, and I think he missed a month or two, and then it was all downhill after that. But I think this is the Archie Bradley that we heard a lot about going into last year. So I like Bradley here. 80 or 6,700 against Philadelphia. It's worth the shot, right? Cut out.
Hey.
Oh, you're good. I can edit this out. That's no big deal.
Sweet. Phew. I don't know what happened. I'm sorry.
Nah, shit happens, dude. We're actually going to start this game over, though.
Okay.
So we'll give a quick break here so I'll know where to pick it up, and then I'll just continue to go.
Okay, cool.
Next up, we have Philadelphia at Arizona. Archie Bradley, Zach Eflin. Eflin, he stinks. This guy's bad at baseball. The problem with Eflin being bad at baseball, the Arizona lineup is bad. It's just not a lineup that is good with David Peralta down, losing Pollock at the beginning of the season. It's really come down to Goldschmidt and Lamb here. What's your thoughts here on Zach Eflin against Arizona?
Yeah, I want to be able to pick on him in this batter's ballpark of Coors Light, but there just isn't anything here to get excited on the Arizona side. I think Goldie is expensive. I think he's a nice pivot off of E5, but it's not something that I'm really like stoked about doing. There isn't anything on the Arizona lineup that really gets my juices flowing, except for maybe Michael Bourne for a cash game play if he gets a spot in the top of that order.
Yeah, if he's in that 2 spot, I agree with you there. Man, it's really tough. Peter O'Brien has some power. He's a good tournament play. If you want to pivot off of E5, Goldschmidt, 4,700 on FanDuel, that would be the pivot that I would look at in tournaments. Just there's not a lot to like here, but, man, we want to pick on Zach Eflin. He just hasn't shown anything.
Yeah, and they're all just kind of too expensive on FanDuel. If they're cheaper somewhere else on the site, it might be a pretty under-owned stack because it's tough to get excited looking at this, that's for sure.
Archie Bradley on the other side here, 6,700 on FanDuel. That seems really cheap in a matchup against Philadelphia. I know it's at Chase, but we have to have some interest in Bradley here.
Yeah, he does get me excited. He actually has K upside that's real. He's been in excellent form, been striking out guys left and right over the last month since he's been called up. And he's, due to get the win against this Phillies team that, is kind of like the Braves, except for they actually strike out.
That is true. They do strike out. One of the worst teams in baseball against right-handed pitching. They're third in WRC plus. They're striking out 21% of the time. It's just not a good offense. And Bradley, 7-game slate, 6,700 with a bad pitcher opposing him. I think he's a guy we can look at in cash games on FanDuel.
Yeah, and then you can pretty much take any single bat you want, and you don't have to worry about the negative metrics that we're seeing with David Price, and you can just in bats we trust in this slate.
In bats we trust for sure. Man, honestly, I don't want any Philadelphia bats here. I really don't. I played Joseph or Rupp on some tournaments every once in a while. Herrera maybe as a one-off. Honestly, I'm going to look elsewhere here.
Yeah, there's no reason to take any Phillies in this matchup.
Moving on to the last game of this nice little morning slate here. Baltimore at San Diego. Christian Frederick against Giovanni Gallardo. 6,900 against San Diego. Does that pique your interest at all?
Yeah. Kind of as a cash game play because I don't see him having strikeout upside. But I do think that the trend is going to continue of people picking on San Diego and Petco. They get the ballpark bump for the pitchers, and they get to face the weak San Diego Padres lineup. I'm actually a bit more interested in Christian Friedrich for the Padres against Baltimore. I understand that they're going to be very likely to take him yard, but I think Friedrich actually has some strikeout upside. That ballpark's just as good for him as it is Gallardo.
I think it depends on the lineup, right? If Baltimore rolls out a righty-heavy lineup, he's only got a 16% strikeout rate to righties dating back to last year. The whip is a 1.88. That kind of scares me. I know he's been pitching a little bit better this season, but I'm more of a historic numbers guy. I like seeing, at least 2 seasons of data, and everything's telling me that if Baltimore goes right-handed heavy against him, I'm just not going to have any interest.
True, but, Petco is one of the best parks in the league for pitchers against right-handed batters. The weakness of Petco is against lefties, but Friedrich's going to be able to shut down the guys that can bomb like Davis and Wieters and Scope. So I'm willing to gamble there in a GPP.
And nothing wrong with taking a shot at it, right? Like Baltimore's still a team that definitely can strike out. They've shown that a few times this season, where they're still one of the best teams in baseball as far as power goes. But the strikeouts, they're definitely there. I don't know, man. I can say as a one-off or a tournament play, if I'm running multiple teams on this slate, I'm not going to tell you no to any pitcher outside of course.
Yeah, that's definitely fine, but still I want to have some K upside for these guys, and I think Ubaldo doesn't have that.
Baltimore better score 15 runs for me here on Tuesday night, so we'll see how that plays out. But let's talk bats in this game. Any Baltimore bats that you want here?
You're right on the righty power side of things, but I think that people are going to look to Baltimore to pivot. They're going to be able to afford their expensive price tags with the pitching options today. So, if people are going to pivot off of Coors Field, Baltimore is probably going to be one of the first places they look outside of Cincinnati with the Cubs there. So, I think I'm just totally off the Baltimore bats. I like this Friedrich kid. Petco isn't a ballpark that I expect teams to put up a crooked number in.
After seeing Baltimore's ownership against Eric Johnson, I have no issues rolling out a Baltimore stack here. I think they'll be low owned again here.
What was their ownership tonight?
Everybody was under 10%. I think. Hold on, I can pull it up while we're going here. I have Baltimore stacks everywhere, so I'm just excited for this game to start after the podcast is over. Trumbo was 6%, Machado was 5%, Chris Davis was 5%, and Wieters was 4%.
Yeah, that's pretty reasonable percentages there.
So if they score a bunch of runs on Tuesday night, you guys know that I did well. But all right, bats here for San Diego. Outside of Myers and Kemp, I really don't get excited about anybody here.
Yeah, there's some nice punt plays, though. Ryan Schimpf has some nice power, 2.2K on FanDuel, and Travis Jankowski has a lot of speed, 2.6K.
Well, do you see what they did, San Diego, on Tuesday night? They led off Upton instead of Janikowski.
That's just silly.
If he gets on base, he's willing to run this year. That's one thing. BJ Upton, Melvin Upton, whatever you want to call him, he has been willing to just run every time he gets on base.
Yeah, but Jankowski is faster, and he's willing to run too.
Hey, I'm all for it, man. Whenever I can get a $2,600 leadoff hitter against a bad pitcher, I'm all for it.
Yeah, so obviously depending on the lineup, and since that's the last game on the slate, it's likely that lineup comes out late. So definitely good to target these later games for GPPs.
Yeah, if you want to, if we don't get a lineup here for Baltimore, remember they're losing the DH in this game. Wieters has played the last 2 nights. If you want to take a shot on a tournament guy on FanDuel, Pedro Alvarez. I don't expect anybody to play him. I think that he might get the start here over Wieters. It would be really risky, but you're risking a guy that has massive upside against a bad pitcher. Or actually, no, it's a lefty. Alvarez won't start. Just don't listen to anything I just said. That's going to wrap it up here for the early slate. Like I said, if you want late game analysis, make sure you guys head on over to the Fantasy Fix podcast. But it's time to play some Home Run Derby. I'll let you lead it off here, Devo, since you're the guest.
All right. Remind me how to play Home Run Derby, please.
I'll let you we're going to pick 3 people each. We're going to rotate picks. And it doesn't matter which price tag, but you can't take anybody in course.
Okay. I'll lead off with Giancarlo Stanton.
Stanton it is. I'm going to stick to that game, and I'm going to go Ozuna.
Ozuna, that's a nice one. All right. I'm going to go down to a cheap guy and go A.J. Reed.
Nice. I like Reed. I like Reed a lot. The guy has power. I can definitely get behind that. Oh, let's see. I'm going to go a little chalky with this next, so I'm going to go Goldie.
Goldie is in a nice park and has a lot of pop, but I'll see your Goldie and raise you a Mike Trout. I think he's going to go under-owned again, and I think he can get out of there against Keuchel.
Really risky last pick here. Hopefully he plays in this game. It's going to be Kurt Casale against David Price. He's 5 for 8 with 3 home runs off of Price.
That is a very fine and spicy pick, my friend.
Yeah, I wanted to take somebody against Price, and I pulled up the BBP, and it was nice.
I'll take Jet Bandy versus Kurt Casale.
Well, we already got 3.
That's true.
You try to get
my honorable mention.
Okay, honorable mention for you guys. Usually I'll take somebody off the list here, but I'm not going to do that. If at the end of the day, if you had to pick somebody to pick up a win, doesn't have to score the most fantasy points, but he's going to win in his start, who would it be?
I like the Archie Bradley kid for Arizona. I think that Phillies is a very weak team, and that he's going to have some run support somehow from whatever mutant lineup the Diamondbacks roll out there.
I wanted to go Bradley as well. Oh, man, it gets ugly. I'll go Kyle Hendricks. I think he picks up the win here. And really, I think Hendricks is probably one of the safest options for a win. He limits his upside by not going deep into games.
Yeah, that's true. And it just is all about whether the Cubs can get some runs against the starting pitcher before they get into that bullpen, eh?
Yeah. So before we get out of here, give me your golf pick of the week, Devo.
My golf pick of the week. Dirt McGurk, 6.8K. He's the only punt I like. I
have no idea who that is, so make sure you guys check that guy out. I'm going to play him now just because you gave me a golf pick of the week.
All right. Yeah, he lets you fit in some other guys. I like his chances.
Make sure you guys are checking out the NASCAR show this Saturday morning at 10:30 Eastern. It's going to be an early show, but it'll be on demand. There is a $300,000 tournament on DraftKings this weekend. So me, myself, and RotoDoc will be doing a show live on Roto Grinders this Saturday. Make sure you guys check that out. And check out our sponsor site, fantasydraft.com. $5,000 home run here on the late slate. Make sure you guys check them out. Use promo code GRINDERS, and that way you get incentives up to a year for free here for Fantasy Draft. And you get a 100% deposit bonus up to $600. Devo, any final thoughts before we get out of here?
Nope, looking forward to getting to play DFS twice tomorrow.
Yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it as well. And the single entry series will have a early bunt and a late bunt. So make sure you guys get in both of those anytime you can get multiple entries into a day with this single entry series. Make sure you guys check that out. That's going to wrap it up here for the Wednesday podcast. We'll be back on Thursday with Derek Carthy. And good luck in your contest tonight. And we'll see you tomorrow.